Somewhere in the Roman Empire, on a Tuesday morning in late summer, a man is buying bread. A woman is arguing with someone at the counter of a thermopolium about what was in yesterday's stew. A stray dog is asleep on the warm stones of a side street, completely unbothered. A gladiator is oiling his arms before his morning training session. A priest is pouring wine onto an altar and muttering a prayer that, today, nobody is going to answer. It is the 24th of August, in the year 79 AD. And in about 4 hours, every single one of these people is going to look up at the mountain they have lived beneath their entire lives. The mountain their parents lived beneath, and their grandparents before them, and realize, far too late, that they were never safe. What happens to Pompeii on this day is one of the most consequential accidents in human history, because the same geological event that kills 2,000 people also freezes an entire Roman city in a single afternoon, preserving it so completely that 2,000 years later, we can walk its streets, read its walls, and look at the food left on its tables. This is the story of Pompeii's last morning, not the eruption, the morning before it. The ordinary, completely unremarkable morning during which a city of 20,000 people went about their lives with absolutely no idea what was coming. And if you think you would have left, if you're sitting there thinking you'd have read the signs and got out in time, I want you to hold that thought, because by the end of this, I think you'll be less sure about that. Let's go back to the beginning. It is 4 in the morning. The sun won't rise for another 2 hours, and Pompeii is already awake. This is something most people don't realize about the Roman world. It was loud, busy, and running at full speed long before dawn. At the bottom of that machine was the slave class. Somewhere between 30 and 40% of the population of a city like Pompeii were enslaved. They were the infrastructure. They were the ones who woke up before everyone else to make sure the city was ready. One of the clearest signs of how sophisticated Pompeii actually was is its water system. 16 public street fountains running continuously, 24 hours a day, fed by an aqueduct stretching 40 kilometers north. In a world where most people in most cities hauled water by hand from wells, Pompeii had free-flowing public water on every major street corner. The sound of running water was the sound of Roman civilization announcing itself. The bakeries of Pompeii are one of the most fascinating details of this city. There are 35 of them, 35 bakeries for a city of roughly 20,000 people. That's one bakery for every 570 residents. Romans almost never cooked at home. Most apartments in a Roman city had no kitchen, no safe way to contain fire in a multi-story building. The city fed itself communally, commercially, from places like this one, and this bakery was already hours into its work before the first customer arrived. The bread of Pompeii has actually been found. When archaeologists excavated the city's bakeries, they discovered carbonized loaves still sitting in the ovens, preserved by the same volcanic ash that killed their maker. Round, with a scored pattern across the top. Exactly the kind of scoring you might see on an artisan loaf today. The shape of bread doesn't change much. Someone baked these loaves on the morning of August 24th. Someone expected to sell them. They never got the chance. The mill is powered by a donkey, walking its endless circular path around a volcanic stone millstone. This is the engine of the Roman food supply. By 7 in the morning, Pompeii is in full motion. The streets of this city are narrow, loud, and completely relentless. These stepping stones are one of the small details that reveal the sophistication of Roman urban planning. The road surface serves as the city's drainage system. The stepping stones let pedestrians cross without walking through it, set at precisely the right height for cartwheels to pass in the gaps between them. If you walk down the main commercial street of Pompeii on this morning, you would pass a street barber operating from a stool on the pavement. A thermopolium, Pompeii's version of a fast food counter, serving hot lentils and stewed meat from ceramic pots set into the stone. Archaeologists analyzing the contents of a Pompeii thermopolium found traces of duck, pig, fish, snails, and beef in those pots. Varied, seasoned food, the food of a city with preferences. Money in Pompeii looks remarkably familiar. Small coins for small transactions, larger denominations for larger ones. A functioning market economy with fixed prices and daily exchange. The walls of Pompeii are one of its most extraordinary features. Over 11,000 pieces of graffiti have been catalogued from the city's walls. Political campaigns, personal insults, poetry, reviews of local businesses, declarations of love. A man named Successus wrote on a wall that he loved a barmaid named Iris. Someone else, probably a rival, wrote underneath it that Iris didn't care about him at all. Successus wrote back. The argument is still there on the wall, 2,000 years later. The gladiatorial barracks are tucked just behind the city's theatre in the south, and Pompeii was absolutely obsessed with the games. The passion matched anything we feel for professional sport today. People had favorites. They argued about matchups. They bet money on outcomes. Hollywood invented the despair. The best gladiators were professional athletes with careers, earnings, and followings. They were professional athletes. The truly elite fighters were celebrities. Their names were on the walls. Women wrote poems about them. Some of them made serious money. This training session happening in the barracks courtyard this morning is professional maintenance work. Methodical, technical, unglamorous. If the thermopolium and the barracks show you one Pompeii, the private homes of the city's wealthy show you an entirely different one. The Roman domus is an architectural marvel. Everything in its design draws inward toward the center. The light, the water, the attention of anyone who enters. The ease and beauty of this life is inseparable from the slavery that maintains it. This is important to say plainly. The woman who will spend this morning reading correspondence while a slave adjusts her hair. Her day is possible because other people's days are not. Bronze tweezers, hairpins, small mirrors, perfume bottles still containing traces of their original fragrance. The desire to look a specific way before facing the world is as old as civilization. Beware of the dog, the sign at the entrance to the house of the tragic poet, set into the floor in thousands of tiny mosaic tiles. This sign has been in this spot since the house was built. It is in this spot right now, today, if you go to Pompeii. 2,000 years of warning visitors to watch their step. The Romans kept dogs as pets. They loved them. They commissioned elaborate artwork about them. An ancient Roman dog warning is, somehow, one of the most completely relatable things in this city. The Forum is the center of everything in a Roman city, not just commerce, though commerce happens here. Politics, religion, justice, social performance. Pompeii, in the summer of 79 AD, is in the middle of an election cycle. The city has its own municipal government, magistrates chosen annually by vote. And based on the sheer volume of campaign graffiti on these walls, the competition is intense. The Forum contains the city's most important temples. In 79 AD, the boundary between religion and civic life doesn't simply blur, it doesn't exist. The morning rituals performed at these temples are public administrative functions. The priests are civil servants. The gods are contractual partners. You give the gods sacrifice, incense, prayer. They give you protection and favorable omens. The relationship requires daily maintenance. The priest pouring wine onto this altar this morning is doing what keeps the city running. And somewhere in that religious system, something is wrong this morning. A haruspex, a specialist in reading the entrails of sacrificed animals, performs a reading and finds the signs troubling. The specific reading doesn't survive, but the unease does. Because Pompeii is, above all else, a commercial city. Its wealth is built on the trade routes of the Bay of Naples, wine from the local volcanic soil, olive oil, and garum, the fermented fish sauce that is, without exaggeration, the most widely traded condiment in the ancient world. Garum from the factories of Campania ends up on tables from Britain to Egypt. The harbour this morning is operating at full capacity, the same as every other morning, because the garum must move. If you stood in the Pompeii market this morning and looked at the produce on offer, you would recognize most of it. Figs, olives, walnuts, dried dates, bread, wine. The Mediterranean diet in 79 AD is not so different from the Mediterranean diet today. The continuity of these foods across 2,000 years is its own kind of startling. In a residential street in the south of the city, a stray dog has curled itself into a patch of sunlight on the warm stones, completely asleep. A dog, warm stones, a patch of sun. This scene, an animal perfectly at home in a city that feeds it scraps and lets it sleep wherever it falls, has been playing out in human settlements since before history was written. It is playing out in this street, on this morning, for what turns out to be the last time. For those who are in school, the day began at dawn. The teacher sits on a chair. The students sit on stools. They read from wax tablets. The school is completely open to the street. The lesson and the foot traffic separated by nothing at all. And through all of this, through the market and the baths and the forum and the school and the bakery and the harbour, Vesuvius sits on the northern skyline, exactly where it has always been. Green, gentle, a feature of the landscape so familiar that it has become invisible. What the people of Pompeii do not know, what nobody in the ancient world understands, is that what they are looking at is not simply a mountain. It is a supervolcano, one that has not erupted in over 700 years, one that has been building pressure for centuries. By late morning, the city has settled into its daily rhythms. The baths will open at 1. The forum will run until dusk. It is a city in the middle of a completely ordinary day. In a private garden somewhere, roses are in bloom around a stone fountain, and a butterfly is crossing the frame with no particular awareness of history. This is the city that is about to be erased. Hold that image. You're going to need it. Here is a question I want you to think about honestly. If your tap water stopped working this morning, would you evacuate your city? Probably not. You'd call the water company, fill some bottles. You'd be annoyed, and you would not, on that basis alone, conclude that your life was in immediate danger. In the days before August 24th, wells across Pompeii and the surrounding countryside begin to run dry. The underground water table is being displaced. Something beneath the earth is moving, pushing the groundwater out of the spaces it has always occupied. This is a textbook precursor to volcanic activity. We know this now. Nobody in 79 AD knows this, because the concept of a volcano as we understand it doesn't exist yet. The earth is cracking, roads and courtyard floors developing new fractures that weren't there the week before. The ground shifting as the magma moves beneath its surface, creating stress fractures in the land above. The public fountains begin to fall silent. A fountain on the Via dei Soprastanti stops flowing. It has never stopped flowing within living memory. The women who come to fill their water jars this morning stand in front of a dry stone spout and try to figure out what to do. And almost every single one of them concludes, this is temporary. Something is wrong with the aqueduct. Someone will fix it. This is exactly how human beings process ambiguous information. We default to the explanation that requires the least dramatic response. The animals know first. This is a documented, recurring phenomenon observed before major earthquakes and volcanic eruptions around the world. Animals detect the precursors, low-frequency vibrations below human hearing, changes in ground gas composition, electromagnetic fluctuations, and they respond with visible behavioral disturbance. The horses in the stables of Pompeii's wealthier households have been refusing their feed since early morning. They pace. They won't settle. The dogs are refusing to go inside. The birds are about to make a decision en masse that puts every human being in this city to shame in terms of situational awareness. The tremors have been increasing in frequency. Small ones, the kind that rattle cups on shelves and make cracks appear in plaster. Pompeii has experienced this before. In 62 AD, 17 years ago, a massive earthquake struck the region. The damage was severe. The city spent 17 years rebuilding. So when a tremor rattles the cups on the table during a late morning meal, the residents of Pompeii have a framework for it. They've seen this. They survived 62. The logical conclusion is, this is another 62. It will pass. The city will be damaged. It will be repaired. Life will continue. That framework is about to be revealed as completely inadequate. A man runs a finger along a new crack in the plaster of his dining room wall. He makes a mental note to call the builders. He goes back to his meal. At approximately 11 in the morning, every bird roosting on the colonnade of the forum rises simultaneously. This is not a flock being startled by a noise. The birds rise together as a single organism, and they fly. And they do not come back. They fly in a single direction, away from the mountain, in the kind of purposeful mass departure that has been documented before major volcanic events worldwide. Every single pigeon, sparrow, and crow that lives on the rooftops of Pompeii has just voted to leave. The humans watch them go, and most of them go back to what they were doing. There are people in Pompeii this morning who are uneasy. An old woman who has spent her entire life watching this mountain, who has seen the dry wells and the cracked earth and the birds and the animals and the tremors, who is holding her small household god and doing the only thing her understanding of the world gives her the tools to do: pray. She is not wrong to be afraid. She is just praying to the wrong department. Here is the thing that the story of Pompeii gets wrong most often. Most people got out. The city had a population of between 11 and 20,000 people. The number of confirmed victims is roughly 2,000. The majority of the people of Pompeii survived. They walked through the city gates with what they could carry, and they did not come back. We know almost nothing about them. History focused on the ones who stayed. Some buried their valuables before leaving, fully intending to return once things settled down. We know this because archaeologists keep finding hoards of buried silver in the ruins, household treasure stashed beneath floors. The owners never came back to collect it. Across the bay at the naval base at Misenum, a man named Gaius Plinius Secundus, Pliny the Elder, receives a message describing a strange cloud over the mountain. Pliny is the author of the Natural History, a 37-volume encyclopedia of everything the Roman world knows about the natural world. His response to the news of an extraordinary natural phenomenon forming across the bay is to call for a boat, not to flee, to investigate. Pliny the Elder will sail directly toward the eruption, while everyone else is sailing away from it. His nephew, Pliny the Younger, watches the whole thing from the safety of Misenum. He later writes 2 letters about it that give us our most detailed first-person account of this day. We owe most of what we know about August 24th to a 17-year-old boy standing on a headland across the bay, watching his uncle sail into a volcano. Back in Pompeii, the majority of people who haven't already left are reaching the same conclusion as the man shrugging at the dry well this morning. This is normalcy bias, one of the most well-documented and most reliably fatal cognitive errors human beings make in the face of slow-building catastrophic risk. At approximately 1 in the afternoon, August 24th, 79 AD, the summit of Vesuvius is breached. The magma that has been building pressure beneath the mountain for centuries finally finds its way through the rock above it. What happens next is instantaneous and total. The eruption column rises at meters per second, reaching a height of over 20 kilometers in minutes. The column at its peak is ejecting approximately 1.5 million tons of material per second into the atmosphere. It is one of the most powerful volcanic eruptions in European recorded history. What falls on Pompeii first is pumice, small, porous volcanic stones raining from the sky like grey hailstones. This phase of the eruption lasts for hours. The pumice accumulates at a rate of roughly 15 centimeters per hour, but it does not immediately kill people. And this is crucial, because the window of escape that many residents used to survive was exactly this phase of the eruption. The people who survive are the people who make the decision to leave during this window, in the first hours, while the streets are frightening but still passable. They wrap their heads in cloth to protect against the falling pumice. They carry what they can. They head for the gates. As the hours pass, the window closes. The pumice level rises past knee height, then hip height. Roofs begin to fail under the weight. Ground floor doors become impossible to open against the pumice piled on the other side. The streets become impassable, and the darkness becomes total. Pliny the Younger describes it as more complete than any night he had ever experienced. Not the darkness of a storm, a darkness in which a lit torch illuminated only a small circle around itself, and beyond that circle, nothing. And then there are the ones who decide to wait it out, who reason, not irrationally, that a solid Roman house with thick walls is safer than running through falling pumice in total darkness. Some of them are right about that, for a while. The volcanic gas concentrations in closed rooms are lower than outside. The walls do provide protection. The problem is that the eruption is not finished. Between midnight and dawn on August 25th, the eruption column begins to destabilize. When the column collapses, the material that was being carried upward suddenly has nowhere to go but outward and downward. It becomes a pyroclastic density current. What I'm about to describe killed approximately 2,000 people, many of whom had survived everything up to this point, many of whom had made every reasonable decision available to them with the information they had. A pyroclastic density current is something worse than fire or lava. It is a superheated cloud of gas, ash, and volcanic rock fragments traveling at speeds of up to 700 kilometers per hour at temperatures between 400 and 700 degrees Celsius. There is no shelter from it. You cannot outrun it. It travels faster than sound. At approximately 6:30 in the morning on August 25th, the fourth pyroclastic surge reaches Pompeii. It moves through the city faster than anything alive can move. The people sheltering in the strongest buildings they could find are killed by the thermal pulse before the surge cloud even arrives at their walls. And then there is a silence over the Bay of Naples that lasts for 1,700 years. Pompeii is sealed. Every room, every corridor, every street, every person, and every object within them, entombed exactly as they were at the moment the surge arrived. What makes the preservation of Pompeii almost impossible to fully comprehend is its completeness. The volcanic material created a near-perfect anaerobic environment inside the sealed deposits. Almost no oxygen, almost no moisture. In these conditions, organic decomposition essentially stops. Wood survives, fabric survives, food survives, the painted walls survive, the bread in the ovens survives. The people do not survive, but the shape of them does. The exact position and posture of every body at the moment of death is captured in the ash that hardened around them. When the bodies eventually decompose, they leave behind perfect negative spaces, molds, in the volcanic rock. Pompeii disappears from written record within a generation. By the medieval period, the site is known locally only as La Civita, the city. What city, exactly, has been lost? In 1748, systematic excavation begins. The discoveries are not what archaeologists expected. They expected ruins, the dignified, weathered remnants of a civilization. What they find instead is a city, intact, mid-sentence. They open rooms and find the furniture still in place. They find food still on tables. They find a dog still chained to its post. They find graffiti on the walls that was written the morning of August 24th. In 1863, the site director, Giuseppe Fiorelli, has an idea that changes the excavation entirely. He has been noticing cavities in the volcanic deposit, hollow spaces where the rock contains nothing. He realizes these are the voids left by decomposed organic material, bodies. He starts filling these cavities with liquid plaster through small holes. When the plaster sets and the surrounding rock is carefully removed, what emerges is extraordinary. Not a skeleton, not fragments, a person. frozen in the exact posture of their last moment, the folds of their clothing preserved, the expression, sometimes, still readable on their face. The Fiorelli casts are among the most affecting objects in all of human history, not because they are horrifying, but because they are specific. This is a person who woke up on a Tuesday morning, who had a name, a household, a routine, plans for the afternoon. Over 1,000 plaster casts have been made at Pompeii. Some show people who died in postures of agitation, trying to run, or covering their faces. Others show people who died calmly, in positions that suggest they had accepted what was coming and simply lay down. There is no way to know which response was correct, because none of them survived. This hand held bread this morning. It dropped coins at the thermopolium counter. It steadied a child crossing the stepping stones in the street. And then it stopped. The bakery is still there. The baker isn't. The fire isn't. The bread isn't. But the volcanic stone millstones have not moved from the positions where the donkey turned them on the morning of August 24th. They have been in these positions, in this room, ever since. The street is still there. The stepping stones are still in their positions. The stone paving still shows the deep ruts worn by cartwheels. You can walk this street today. You can step on the same stones. You can stand in the same spot where the children were standing on the morning of the last day. The frescoes survive in colors that should not have survived. The deep red. The painted gardens with their birds and their fountains. Colors that look, when the excavation light first hits them, as if they were painted last week. Beware of the dog. Still there. The house has no roof now, the family long gone, but the warning pressed into the floor in thousands of tiny tiles is still doing its job. A carbonized wooden toy, found in the ruins, preserved by the same ash that killed the child who owned it. The pool is empty, the family is gone. But what was built to hold both of them is still here, holding a different kind of light on a different kind of morning. Pompeii today receives about 2.5 million visitors a year. They walk the same streets. They read the same walls. They stand in the same gardens. It is one of the strangest experiences available to a human being. To walk through a city that was frozen in an afternoon. To stand in rooms where the furniture left marks on the floors. And the strange thing is, it doesn't feel as distant as you think it will. It feels close. Disconcertingly close. The bread is in a museum in Naples. Black, ancient, exact. The scored pattern across the top of each round loaf, identical to what we saw in the oven this morning. Someone baked this bread. The gap between that expectation and this glass case is 2,000 years, and it feels like nothing at all. There is a specific feeling that Pompeii produces that I have never found an adequate word for. It is something closer to recognition. The recognition that the distance between us and them, across 2,000 years, across the entire arc of Western civilization, is enormous in time and almost nothing in substance. They argued about politics. They cared about how they looked in the morning. They kept pets and spoiled them. They had favorites among the athletes and argued about those favorites with their friends. They bought fast food on the way to work. They sent their children to school. They woke up on a Tuesday morning and expected to go to bed that night. Vesuvius is still there. Of course it is. It has erupted more than 50 times since 79 AD, most recently in 1944. 3 million people live within the designated danger zones around it today. The Italian government has evacuation plans. Volcanologists monitor the mountain continuously, with instruments the people of Pompeii could not have imagined. They cannot tell you when it will erupt again. They can tell you that it will. And 3 million people live there anyway, because Vesuvius has always been there, because the volcanic soil produces extraordinary crops, because it is home, because the calculation that says the danger is real but unlikely to materialize during my lifetime is, statistically, probably correct. The 3 million people living in the shadow of Vesuvius today are making the same calculation that the residents of Pompeii were making on the morning of August 24th. The only difference is that they have better instruments. Every city believes it will last forever. Every city is built on the assumption that the ground beneath it is permanent, that the rhythms of daily life it has established will continue to establish themselves indefinitely. Pompeii was a real city, with real people, who had the same relationship to their lives that we have to ours. They did not feel like ancient history. They felt like Tuesday. And then, at 1 in the afternoon, without warning and without mercy, the mountain they had looked at every single day of their lives decided to stop being a mountain. What was left was a city, sealed in amber, waiting to be opened, waiting to show us not what the ancient world looked like, but what it felt like, what it smelled like, what people argued about, and how they dressed, and what they ate for breakfast. Pompeii is a monument to an ordinary morning that happened to be the last one. Every time you see the life in it, before you see the loss, Pompeii is doing exactly what it was preserved to do. It is reminding you that history is not something that happened to other people in another world a long time ago. It happened to people exactly like you, on a morning exactly like this one.